Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, but thank you so much for that introduction. And again, thank you for the invite. And for sure, rejection is such a huge topic. But before we jump into talking a little bit about rejection, I'll introduce myself a bit. So, I'm the founder of a private career coaching practice called Beam Career Coaching. So, what I do is I work with job seekers one on one. I help them build their confidence, I help them network and brand themselves, market themselves to employers to ultimately land their dream job. And along the way, of course, through all the dozens of applications and the interviews, inevitably there is a time where um, people will unfortunately hear a no from an employer. And at times it could be an opportunity that they were super excited about, an opportunity that could be their dream job. And I think a lot of the rejection sensitivity stems from fantasizing about the role and attaching, I would say, their self worth to that outcome. So, rejection sensitivity overall, I think, is trying to control outcomes that unfortunately you cannot control. So even though you can control your performance in the interview, you can control, what you put on your resume. You can control the conversation that you have with the employer. Ultimately, you can't control their verdict. So I think that's something that if we're able to kind of dissect and separate, we're able to kind of move forward and recognize that I'm going to try controlling the parts where my action, is involved. But in terms of other people's opinion, unfortunately, we don't have control over that. So attaching our self-worth to that outcome is sort of where people slip. Um, yeah.
And do you think that's what makes us more anxious through the job search process because we're scared or fearing
Yeah.
that rejection when I guess we put a lot of hope on an outcome that obviously, as you say, we aren't in control of.
Exactly, exactly. So letting go of that control and recognizing that you've done your best and you've controlled what you can, and then letting go of those expectations is a really big release when it comes to facing rejection sensitivity. Another thing that I had mentioned about self worth, so I think it goes in two directions. So on one hand, there's this constant need to be liked. So a lot of people want to make a good impression, and if we hear that we didn't get the job, we might think, oh, am I not likable? Is there a problem with my competence? Do I not have the skills? So if you are someone who is struggling with low self-esteem, you might even be looking for confirmation bias that you in fact do not have the skills or do not have the talent. And when you hear that no, it's because you were expecting that no, and now you're kind of living in a self-fulfilling prophecy. So
Yeah.
low self-esteem is a huge part of I would say suffering from rejection sensitivity. And then on the other side, there could be a sense of overconfidence and entitlement where some people might think that they were the perfect fit and oh, I blew that interview out of the park. I had such a great conversation. I know I'm going to get this job. And then when they hear that no, it's that mismatched expectation that kind of hits them in the face. So it's sort of overconfidence, and then on the other side of that, really low self-esteem or low confidence. So both extremes of that spectrum, I think, lead to rejection sensitivity and sort of an inability to move forward in the job search process.
And you probably understand this as well as me. I mean, I haven't been a recruiter, I've been an employer. I think you've had a recruitment background. And I think one of the things that I always wish more candidates knew is that the reason that you might reject someone's job application is such a broad range of reasons from
Exactly.
they're overqualified for the role, they wouldn't fit the team culture, or you're looking for a certain personality or an energy. It's got nothing to do with your skill set, or
Mm-hmm.
intuitive or how likable you are.
Yeah.
But it's just such a broad range of issues. So that's one thing that I always wish more jobs interviewed, how difficult it is on the flip side, and that it's a really hard thing to reject people or to, say no to a job application that you can see a lot of time has gone into.
Exactly. It's considering the alternatives, right? So rather than attaching ourselves to this story and taking it personally or attaching our self-worth to this outcome of a no, considering all the other alternatives such that maybe there were some really great candidates out there that had a little something that was different, or what if they decided to move in a completely different direction than what was initially discussed, right? So there's a lot of things happening internally in the organization that you may not know about. So I think it's important to kind of think big and consider alternatives and think of it as a learning experience. So interviewing is practice. Each interview is great practice for the next until you finally land a job. So I would say, especially early on, people might feel a lot more rejection sensitivity. If they haven't interviewed in a really long time, they might be putting a lot of pressure on themselves. And one of the best ways to kind of relieve that pressure, I think, is to accept that it may take a few times before you're comfortable sharing your story and moving forward with a role that is meant for you. So thinking of the adage, rejection is redirection, it really is. And then also focusing on whether or not you truly like this company or would have been happy in that role. A lot of the times when it's a no, it wasn't a good mutual fit. So people often just think of the employer rejecting them, but they don't really stop to think about, well, is this a company that I could have seen myself at long term? And if the answer is yes, then maybe there's some opportunity to explore a good fit down the road. So another way to combat rejection sensitivity on the job search is to focus on relationship building. So just because it's a no for now doesn't mean that it's a no forever. So really focusing on ending things on a good note and asking for feedback. So that's, a learning opportunity, but also keeping in touch or attempting to keep in touch with the employer so that if another role opens up down the road, you might be the first person that they think about. And especially if you take it positively, they would be more inclined to reach out to you than if you get bitter or burn a bridge and now they don't have such a good feeling about working with you again. So always think long term, always think big, and it's not a no forever. It could just be a no for now.
Yeah, that's a good tip actually, and that's definitely been something that I've done before. So I've had a candidate in for a certain job, and I was hiring generally marketing roles. So I've had a candidate in, I've kept them in mind and thought, actually, I'd really like them in my team, but they're not quite the right person for this role. And then contacted them a couple of months later and said, are you still looking? And maybe, there's this role that you'd be interested in. So that's a really good one. And I completely agree with you. So there are a couple of other tips there. One was on rejection as redirection. So that's another one that's really worth picking up on and understanding, I guess, that often it's because the employer or the interviewer even can tell that maybe this isn't the right role and that maybe you've applied because it's part of your numbers strategy, maybe trying to get resumes out there. And it's often quite obvious from an employer or an interviewer's perspective.
Exactly.
Did you have some more tips?
Absolutely. So I think what I try to coach all of my candidates on, especially the ones that are dealing with a heightened sense of rejection sensitivity in the job search, to work on their confidence. And really the best way to do that is to take an inventory of all the things that you love about yourself. So really spending some time doing some self-reflection, Make it part of your journaling practice if you like to journal. If it's new to you, it's something that I highly recommend. So job search journaling goes a really long way, and just thinking about some of the things that you're really proud of, things that you are really happy to share with others. So it could even just be in your personal life. It doesn't always have to be part of your professional life, but if there's certain qualities about your character that you hold in high esteem, it's important to write those things down and take some time to acknowledge those things. I think it helps build confidence and sort of get over some of the feelings of rejection that you might face if you get a no during your job search. Another thing that I think is really important is working on self-compassion. So just acceptance and knowing that you did your best, and that you'll have another shot. But a big key factor of self-compassion is really forgiving yourself, right? Just letting go of that pressure. And trying to be more mindful, focusing on your well-being, whether it's your emotional well-being or your physical well-being. These are two aspects that are really important as you are kind of being faced with a challenging journey when you are looking for a new role. So it's just important to take extra care of yourself. And you don't have to go through it alone. It's really important to find your supporters, find your community. So whether you join a job seeking community, so it seems like you've, started a platform, Job Seeker Society, that is specifically for job seekers. So joining a community like that, I think, is really empowering, and it helps develop more self-compassion, knowing that you're not the only one feeling like you're struggling in your job search. And then joining more events. So for the people that are listening right now, if any of you are currently job searching, this is a really great step in the right direction to developing more confidence, self-compassion in the job search journey, and obviously soaking up advice. And something that I talked about earlier on was letting go of outcomes that you cannot control and focusing on outcomes that you can control. So you can control learning more about the job search process. You can learn more about the company, you can do your research, you can show up on time, you can present yourself well, you can practice your career narrative. So you can do all of those things. You have control over that. But the one thing you don't have control over is the employer's verdict. At the end of the day, you could be the best candidate and they may still say no because they may have other priorities or other ideas for where this role is going. So I think it is one of those things, right, where you have to separate what you can and cannot control.
That's right. And I think with COVID at the moment, there are so many variables, and it's sort of a moving feast, I guess, on the employers end. They lose funding for a job and things like that. So as you say, being able to control what you can control, trying to control, the controllable, is a really good mindset.
Yeah, for sure.
That sounds good. So those are some really good practical tips. Do you have any more, or is that your list?
So those are pretty much the main ones, right? So practicing self-compassion, identifying what you can and cannot control, and seeking support. A final thing that I will say is anytime you receive a rejection in your job search is to make sure that you ask for feedback, and I would express gratitude. So always say thank you when you are told that you're not moving forward in the selection process, because a lot of the times, unfortunately, companies will ghost candidates. So it is a really big deal when they get back to you and they offer you that bit of advice and they don't leave you hanging. So again, that's an opportunity to build a relationship, and don't think of it as a no forever. It could just be a no for now. So thank them, ask them what you could have done to improve as you move forward in your job search, and maybe you'll uncover some pieces that can help you be a better candidate for other companies or if you do decide to reapply, a lot of companies will have certain rules or policies where they can't divulge a lot of information, but it always helps to ask. And then you have to be big enough to take that feedback on and take it constructively. And always think of feedback as a gift, because it really does empower you to become better. And it's through that process that you will start to see growth, and then you will start to see more companies take an interest in you and eventually land that job that you have your heart set on.
Yeah. Good one. Well, thanks so much for all of that. I think that's really helpful.
Thank you.
I think it really hit the nail on the head with some succinct but really practical advice. So, yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I hope everyone gets something out of it.
Yeah, I hope so too. This was great, and good luck. I'm really looking forward to seeing your page grow.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
All right, have a great day. Bye.